Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for Friday, the 14th of September, 2012. Tropics remaining very active, but nothing coming anywhere close to the United States or the Lesser Antilles or the Greater Antilles over the next several days. Nadine struggling to become a hurricane. I think it'll still eventually do so and head on off towards the Azores, which are under the influence of an upper-level low right now, producing some convection in and around the islands there, the Azores. Don't worry about this. It's down in the deep tropics where conditions just are not favorable this year. Nothing has developed out in this area right here of any circumstance at all. Everything has come to life north of the typical breeding grounds. A very unusual occurrence, not impossible, but quite unusual to see this happen. There's Nadine trying to ramp up and eventually become a hurricane. Too far away, I think, to generate any significant swells. There may be just a little bit of an increase as this energy radiates out and eventually affects the east coast and possibly even the north side of the Caribbean islands. And if we look at sea surface temperature anomalies, this is really interesting to me, and hopefully it is to you. There is the cold plume left behind by Leslie. That's the cold plume left behind by Michael. Michael was much smaller in size. Remember how large Leslie was. And you can see that influence there, that a large chunk of the Atlantic cooled off there, relatively speaking, and then a much smaller area by Michael. Nadine will remove a little bit of heat out of this region. But let's look in the eastern Pacific. Check out all this cold water starting to come in here relative to normal, and the lack of heat out here in the tropical Pacific along the equator. We were supposed to be in El Nino conditions out in this region by now, according to the models from several months ago. That is clearly not the case. Yes, there are some positive anomalies in here, but it's really not that substantial. And I think as we couple that with the coming supposed favorable MJO pulse headed for this region, that by the end of the month and into October, we probably have an opportunity to have another potential setup for a landfall, and that doesn't just mean the United States, of course, in the western Atlantic basin. Furthering some of this evidence is the Southern Oscillation Index, the pressure pattern across the tropical Pacific, not anywhere supporting El Nino right now. The 30-day average is +3. The 90-day average is only -4. We typically look for it to be around -8 for El Nino, and then the daily is 3.8. So the pressure pattern almost neutral right now, just a little bit negative overall, as you can see on the 90-day, but half of what it should be if we were really seeing an El Nino event taking place. Now the Madden-Julian oscillation, that favorable upward motion pattern, apparently heading out of the regions that are not favorable for western Atlantic development, heading into such regions, as you can see by the gray here, by the time we get towards the end of the month. This represents the next 2 weeks, ending about the 28th of September or so, and most of the MJO forecast parameters from the GFS indicating that we are heading in this general direction here. And that means that we should see a noticeable increase in tropical storm formation in the models, in the long range, and then eventually in the short range, and then it would come to fruition. Right now, though, very dry air all across the deep tropics still, as indicated by these darker colors through here. This is that tropical wave that the Hurricane Center outlined, and it's just really going to struggle. There's an upper level low in here, very strong wind shear, very negative conditions right now. But if we go back to that graphic, this suggests to me that in the next couple of weeks, the conditions should start to get more favorable as the MJO pattern starts to favor the western hemisphere, starting in the eastern Pacific and moving across the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and into the western Atlantic. But right now, nothing. We're not going to have anything to worry about over the next couple of, probably week to 10 days, I would say. Even in the eastern Pacific, Tropical Storm Christy going to move on out, staying away from the Baja, so no problems there at all. Where there will be a problem is in the western Pacific with Super Typhoon Sanba, and it's going to be heading up towards Korea, passing possibly directly over Okinawa. Look at the outflow pattern. Giant outflow, huge upper level anticyclone This is where the MJO pulse is very favorable right now, substantially supporting upward motion in the atmosphere, that spreading out of the air. But you can also see on this shot, there's the cold front coming in. That'll help nudge this to the north and have it come on into the Korean Peninsula, which is what the forecast shows from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Don't forget, Hurricane HD have tracking for typhoons. Just look on the global or the world tracking map section and you'll see this in there. A very, very nice feature that other apps simply do not have, so take advantage of that. Very nice to see. I was checking it out the other day, in fact. Satellite pictures as well. So the Joint Typhoon Warning Center shows that this will pass directly over or very close to Okinawa here in the next couple of days, and then finally into the Korean Peninsula in the East China Sea. Just hopefully it'll weaken and maybe go through some eye wall replacement cycles to knock down those winds a little bit. But either way you cut it, this is going to be a serious, serious situation for this part of the world, and we'll keep an eye on that as it progresses. Well, there you go. You're up to date for today, the 14th of September. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, my website. Always a pleasure to produce these videos for you, and I'll be back to do that again tomorrow.